Yo, what's good, everybody? Today, I'm finally talking about Canelo versus Crawford. There's so much to talk about. This is going to be a very long video. There are many factors that go into breaking down and ultimately predicting the winner of this fight. So bear with me. I'm going to start off with their physical attributes, their build and frame. So this fight is taking place at the super middleweight division, right? Where Canelo has been reigning as the top dog for 3 or 4 years now. So safe to say that he is fully acclimated at the weight. Crawford, of course, has never fought at super middleweight before. He has never fought higher than junior middleweight, which is 154, if you guys are getting it confused. He is jumping up 2 more divisions from his previous fight and facing the man of the division. So while he is at a massive size advantage, he is also a bit taller than Canelo, and he does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Now, I think the height difference is negligible, but the 3-inch reach advantage could be very, very beneficial for Bud, seeing as he does have a very high IQ as well as an educated lead hand. Moving on to their fighting attributes and what they hold as an advantage over the other. I'm going to start off with Canelo because I feel that we've seen enough of him at the weight to really be, sure of what he's going to bring come fight night. The first advantage being the most obvious, which is, of course, power. As the naturally smaller man, Canelo has knocked down and hurt most of his recent opponents, guys. And he even put down Kovalev at 175. Though Bud obviously has pop as well, I don't think there's an argument for him to be the harder hitter over Canelo. I would give Canelo the leg up on defense and durability as well. Canelo does use the high guard, but his high guard isn't static. He often parries and counters, and he has very good eyes where, for the most part, he sees shots coming and he can brace for the impact or roll with the punches. And as we all know, if Canelo wants to get jiggy with it, he can also be very evasive and flashy with his head movement. Now, even if he does get hit, Canelo has shown to have an all-time chin. He can really take a hit, guys. As I said before, he's been undersized for the majority of his career, and he hasn't been visually hurt for a decade or so now, and he's never ever been dropped either. Now, Bud's defense and durability is great as well. You really don't get to the level where both of them are without having really good defense and without being able to take a good shot. I just feel that he gets hit a little bit more compared to Canelo, and he doesn't take shots as well as Canelo does. In terms of defense, I believe Canelo has a minor advantage, but Canelo has a major advantage when we're talking about durability. Experience is another advantage for Canelo, in my opinion. This man has been the face of boxing for years now. He's had more fights, he's had bigger fights, and he's fought way tougher competition than Terrence "Bud" Crawford. Not only has Canelo fought championship fights, but he's also been under the bright lights much longer than Crawford has. I don't think this is debatable at all. Another advantage that goes hand in hand with Canelo's size is his strength. Now I see everyone claiming that Crawford is stronger because of all these stories about how he's a wrestler and how he deadlifted 500 pounds and this and that, and I'm just not buying it, guys. Now, I do believe that Crawford is freakishly strong for his size. Yes, I do believe that. But I don't think he's stronger than Canelo. Canelo is a tank. He's literally built like a fire hydrant. Thick and tough and built all around. I'm telling you right now, Crawford is gravely mistaken if he buys into the narrative that he's stronger than Canelo. If push comes to shove, Canelo will push Crawford around and bully him around. And I hate to say it, I really think he can manhandle Crawford, and that is a hill I would die on. Now, moving on. Let's talk Crawford's advantages, starting with skills. Crawford does have a deeper bag than Canelo. He's a lot more versatile, and he has shown to be a lot more dynamic. I think he puts his punches together better, and he varies his combinations as well. Fundamentally and technically, Crawford has Canelo beat. He makes less technical mistakes. His footwork and balance is better. His technique is better. There's less quote-unquote fat in his punches. I would also say that he has a higher boxing IQ than Canelo. He's a little bit more savvy in there, a little bit craftier, a little bit more creative. He sets more traps, and he really takes the sweet science approach into his boxing. Not to say that Canelo doesn't, but I just feel that Crawford is more of a thinker than Canelo. It's a larger part of his game. He sets more traps. He conditions his opponents to think one way just to go the other around later. You know what I mean? Again, like I said, I'm not saying Canelo doesn't set traps. I'm not saying Canelo doesn't use his head. I'm just saying Crawford does it more and is a little bit better at it than Canelo. And it goes hand in hand with my point about his skills and versatility. Once Crawford catches on and figures you out, Crawford adjusts and he pulls out a different tool for the job. Whereas in recent years, for the most part, Canelo has shown to fight in one way only. Another advantage that Crawford has is his speed. Now I know as it puts on more mass, he's bound to be slower than what he has been. He's bound to be less agile and mobile. But I do think he is still going to be faster than Canelo. If Crawford weighs in between 162 and 164, I think that would be optimal in order for him to retain his speed and quickness. But if he weighs in any heavier, let's say 165, 166, dare I say even 167 or 168, I think that would be a huge mistake. I think it would hinder his performance. I think he would be much slower, and I think his gas tank will take a massive hit. Now, I want to move on to what I think they need to do in order for them to win, right? I'm going to start with Canelo. I think Canelo just needs to be Canelo, right? I don't necessarily think he needs to change his style much, but I think he needs to come into this fight a lot more switched on than he has been in the past couple of years. And I think he will be. I think the fights with Munguia and Berlanga and Charlo and Ryder and even the third fight with Triple G, I just feel like he's been cruising. I don't think he saw them as any sort of threat at all. And therefore, he just relaxed. He didn't go above and beyond. Whereas in this fight, I think he's really going to take Crawford seriously. I think he sees the comments. He hears what people are saying about how he's going to get outboxed and this and that. And I just don't think this is in his mind. I just don't think he's going to allow Crawford to come into his weight division as the much smaller man and beat him. I just don't think Canelo will allow that. And I think he's going to do anything and everything to prepare for Crawford. And I think he's going to turn up as the best Canelo we've seen in years. And I think that's what we're going to get. I think he's going to fight a little smarter. I think he's going to come in a little lighter, actually, because he isn't fighting the bigger man here. He is the bigger man. He's fighting someone smaller this time. He needs to be able to match Crawford's speed and footwork. He needs to be able to consistently apply that suffocating pressure as the larger man. He needs to be able to keep up with Crawford's lateral movement, and he needs to be able to cut off the ring. I think coming in a pound or two lighter than usual will really help him in this fight. Hell, even if it comes in his regular weight, I can see him being too much for Crawford. But if he decides to come in lighter, I can really see him securing the victory. If he's as switched on as he was against Triple G in their second fight, Crawford is toast. Alright? But moving on to Crawford's path to victory. Now, there's two ways Crawford can fight Canelo. The safest way would be to fight how he fought Victor Postol. He has to be mobile, use his legs, use his speed, and don't stay at a spot for more than 20 seconds. Be so elusive that you frustrate the hell out of Canelo because he can't touch you. Counter and punish every time Canelo makes mistakes, and the mistakes will be more frequent the more frustrated he gets. That's one way to beat Canelo. But can Crawford fight like that at 38 years old while being 28 pounds heavier? I would bet not. And even if he managed to pull that off, I doubt the judges will give him the rounds. As we all know, the judges tend to favor Canelo's come forward, high pressure, hunting style. So it's hard for me to see Crawford winning that way. I can see him beating Canelo that way, but I can't see him being awarded the win. You know what I mean? Now, the other way is much riskier, and it requires the absolute best of Terrence Bud Crawford. And that is to fight how he has been fighting most of his fights in recent years. Be the ultimate counter puncher. Be a southpaw. Hold your ground in the mid-range. Occupy Canelo's high guard with probes and jabs. Break Canelo's base and stop his advance by stabbing him to the body. Circle out when he closes the gap. Avoid fighting in close. be a bit more mobile than you have been. You know, lateral movement does bother Canelo. Frustrate him with your lead hand and movement, and eventually he will get frustrated, and out of desperation he will make even more mistakes. Like I said earlier, counter and punish him for every mistake he does. Canelo has a tendency to swing wide looping hooks and overhand rights where he leaves himself open when thrown. Counter that, you know, slip the hook or the overhand and make him pay for dropping the opposite hand. Canelo also puts his weight in his front foot a lot. You know, catch his rhythm and disrupt it with your jab. Catch him on his way in. He has to do all this, right, while staying defensively responsible and avoiding getting hit by the major shots of Canelo's. He needs to enter some sort of flow state where he makes minimal mistakes and punishes every mistake that Canelo has. He has to be extremely switched on from the start. In other words, Terrence Crawford needs to have a perfect performance or near it. And to be perfectly honest, it's just hard for me to see Crawford pulling it off. It's very hard for me to see that. Look, Canelo is an all-time great. He too has a very, very high IQ. He's seen everything, every style, and he's fought people who are just as smart or even smarter than Crawford. No, he hasn't fought anybody with a package that Crawford brings, but throughout his career, he's seen elements of it. There are things that Crawford can do to really trouble Canelo, like his lead hand. If you look at Bivol and Kovalev in particular, both of them had great success with their lead hands. With their probes and jabs, they were able to occupy Canelo's high guard or break his base or make him lose balance and basically just keep Canelo from getting to them, right? But those two were both much bigger than Canelo. He fought Kovalev and Bivol at light heavyweight. They experienced much success because they were that much bigger than Canelo, especially Kovalev. And again, fighting at 168 is completely different from fighting at 147 or even 154. Crawford must be sparring much larger men day in and day out, and he's estimated to put on about 15 to 20 pounds of mass in over a year. That can't be optimal for an athlete. There's no way. It's already crazy for a bodybuilder to put on 10 to 15 pounds of muscle in a year. For an athlete to put on 15 to 20 pounds in just over a year is insane. I reckon Bud would be lifting much heavier than he usually does, doing all kinds of different things to put on the weight. All these things will undoubtedly negatively affect his conditioning, his stamina, his speed, his footwork. And with the nature of big fight training camps, they can be grueling and punishing. And I reckon he'll have quite a bit of nagging injuries going into this fight. But let me circle back to the science of the fight. I do think Canelo's feints will prove to be troublesome for Bud, especially after he gets hit flush. After taking the first big hit from Canelo, I think Bud will be a lot more tentative. And that's when the effectiveness of Canelo's foot feints and lead hand feints and level changes drastically increases. And with effective feints come high impact shots. I can see Canelo's signature looping, level changing hooks landing in the second half of this fight because of that. I can see his signature double jab overhand right landing as well. Maybe not flush, but definitely scoring. Remember how competitive Madrimov was at 154. That was because of all the feints he deployed in that fight. His heavy shots at 154 and his unpredictability had Bud tentative for most of that fight. Now, as for Crawford, I think his traps will be very, very successful in this fight. Traps where Canelo is following him and he walks him into a punch. I can see Crawford landing some flush shots because of that and getting a reaction from the crowd. I can also see his varied combination punching being successful. I can see him winning rounds, you know, but I think Canelo will eventually catch on. I think he's going to understand what Crawford's game is and he'll catch on his timing and tendencies, and I think he starts shooting with him. Now once Canelo starts shooting with Crawford, I think it's over. You know, Canelo is quick. He is quick. That left hook that he dropped Berlanga with, I mean, that came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? There was no tell in that punch. Canelo is quick and his timing is elite. He's the more durable fighter and the harder hitter. I can see him having tremendous success once he starts shooting with Bud. especially because Bud is a dog. You know, he's the type to want to get his lick back after getting hit. If Bud gets lured into a firefight, it is definitely over, you know. With all that being said, my final prediction is a Canelo victory by split decision. I don't think it's going to be controversial. I think it'll be competitive and entertaining, but I don't think it'll be controversial. Ultimately, I just think Canelo's size, strength, power, experience, pressure, and timing will be too much for Terrence Crawford at 168. I can see a valid scorecard of 6'6", 7'5", and maybe even a very, very competitive 8-4 in favor of Canelo. Bud can absolutely win, but like I said, he has to be near perfect. So I'm leaning towards Canelo in this fight, guys. He has too many advantages, or rather, Crawford has a lot of disadvantages, and there's too many unknowns with Crawford at super middleweight. You know what I mean? And honestly, even if they were at the same weight class, right? Even though Crawford has the stylistic advantage, I don't think it's egregious to think that Canelo could beat him. You know, I wouldn't favor Canelo, but I also don't think it's unfathomable at all, if I'm being completely honest. You know, the gap in skill and IQ is not that wide for that to be an egregious thought, to think that Canelo could beat him even if they were in the same weight class. But you know what? That's beside the point. In reality, they are fighting at 168, and the older Crawford will be at a severe size disadvantage, and he will be coming off a 13-month layoff compared to Canelo's 4-month layoff. So that's it for me. A very, very long video, and I do apologize if I wasn't the most coherent in this video, but it was just a lot of thoughts in my head coming in and out as I made the video. But yeah, I want to know what you think of the fight. Who do you think will win and how? I'm sure I missed some points that I wanted to add on. Maybe I'll drop some more points in the comment section. But for now, this is what I got for you guys. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. I want to thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope you have a lovely day.